Hello, and welcome back to the UAS Magazine podcast. My name is Danielle Piekarski, and I am your host. Today we are joined by two guests from AUVSI, Keely Griffith, Vice President of Strategic Programs at AUVSI, and Casie, Ocana, Vice President of Public Affairs at AUVSI. Thank you both for joining me today. I'm excited for our conversation.
We are too. Thanks for having us.
Of course. So to get started, for any listeners who might not be familiar with XPONENTIal, can you explain what that is and what makes it different from other tech or industry trade shows?
Sure, I'll jump in on this one, Danielle. So XPONENTIal is the largest trade show devoted exclusively to uncrewed systems and the technologies that support them. It's interesting when we think about what differentiates it from other tech events. And I think when I look at the other events that I might attend that are in kind of the tech space, you get much more broad with topics. And so they might hit on things like AI or machine learning or autonomous systems, but they're not really going to take a deep dive into those technologies. So at XPONENTIal, there's both the trade show floor, so we can talk about exhibits and the cool technologies that you'll see, but we're also thinking about the conference programming. And the idea there is that you go beyond just the surface and how do you apply these technologies? And it's more about how are these technologies designed? How are we addressing the policy and regulatory issues that impact this industry? On the floor, it's what does it take to build these technologies? Where can you go and source the components or the enabling software, et cetera? And then obviously we pride ourselves on being a convener of these stakeholders. So if you're looking to connect with regulators, other government stakeholders, whether that's in the defense or the civil space, potentially the business leaders, or even the leading technologist in autonomy, this is the place that you would go.
Great, thank you. So in addition to those folks that you just mentioned, who else is coming to XPONENTIal and why? What kind of attendees or industries are you all bringing together?
Yeah, I think building on what Keely was mentioning about the uniqueness of the show, it draws kind of that unique cross section because of the breadth and depth that we go into here. So you'll have anyone from engineers and program managers, from defense, research and regulators, from government agencies, commercial operators, from agriculture to energy to logistics, and even public safety officials too. And they come because it's that one place where you can see how these technologies are converging and then have those conversations about where they go next, to Keely's point. So you can see, feel, touch the technology, and then go to the sessions to learn about what's coming next, how they're being integrated, and kind of see that whole picture. So it's really that place for all of those broad audiences to come together, and they all have something that they're going to get out of it. And then it's also a place for fun as well. So we have the Expo Rodeo that one of our chapters is leading on. So it's also those after hours, off the record conversations that people are having and building those relationships. So I think that's where we're able to bring everybody together, where no other event kind of does that full connection.
Yeah, I am not familiar with any other shows that have a rodeo, so that sounds really great. What are some of the most exciting trends or technologies that you plan on showcasing this year? I know we had a conversation last year about XPONENTIal. Is there anything new?
Yeah, I can jump into that on a couple areas. And I know Keely, leading on some of the programming side, can talk about some of those conversations as well. But one of the big ones is around advanced aerial mobility. So having the showcase of some of the technology there. I've always enjoyed going to trade shows when they have the technology in person. So we have some of the aircraft actually coming in that we'll be able to see on the show floor. And it's always fun to walk around and see those in particular. But I think because of some of the big things that are happening within the space, we're very excited to see some of that in person, as we'll start to see it kind of out in the wild a little bit more coming soon. But Keely, anything else you would add on more of the trends or on the technology side?
Sure. I think that it's when we think about the conference program as a whole, it's the way in which it's built out that showcases kind of the breadth that's covered here. So yes, we have the regular, like the technical tracks that are going to get into everything from research and platform design, but also the components and materials that make up those systems and how they can best be leveraged. I think that you'll also see quite a bit more in the security space this year. So whether that's cybersecurity solutions and how those are being integrated in by different organizations, or potentially even how counter UAS technologies are going to be leveraged in the future. I think that those are the kind of two unique pieces this year that I would point out.
Awesome. Okay. So how do you see those technologies at XPONENTIAL influencing those broader sectors that you touched on earlier, like the public safety industry, infrastructure, or like transportation?
Oh, sure. So at the core, uncrewed systems are meant to enhance efficiency and safety and really be a force multiplier for organizations. So expanding the coverage, it really does make them a game changer if you're trying to manage things like risk, or if you're trying to span large geographies, or potentially just operate on tight budgets. For the public safety sector, it leads to faster and safer responses. It helps to provide additional situational awareness, search and rescue capabilities, which I know you've seen following different hurricanes and storms, and then even used for event security and crowd monitoring. For infrastructure, and this is something that I think will be even more applicable in the Houston area, these technologies are being used pretty heavily in things like inspection and maintenance. So whether that's inspecting bridges or towers or pipelines, you see some of those higher risk areas really leveraging them to reduce their own risk. Obviously, mapping and surveying have been using these technologies for quite some time. And then on the show floor, as I mentioned already, with public safety, disaster response and recovery is pretty significant. So, and with the weather changing the way it is, I find that these technologies are being employed even more. And then for transportation, Casie mentioned that we'll have one of the like advanced air mobilities technologies on the show floor. So that's really exciting to see, and how it's going to move people, but also how these technologies are being used to move goods. So this could be in the air or on the ground or even on the water. So autonomous transit, smart logistics and delivery. And then obviously you can use these technologies for traffic monitoring and management as well.
That sounds great. So, among all the attendees, you've got a blend of government, commercial, even some international participants. When you think of collaborations amongst your attendees, what are you hoping to spark at the event?
Sparking cross-sector collaboration at an event like this is part of the reason that we hold it. It drives innovation, it accelerates adoption, and honestly, it ensures a different alignment on emerging standards and policies. So you'll see some of that worked into the program as well. The partnerships that we hope to see form, government identifying capability gaps. So that's something that we see happen every year, and we get a lot of great feedback on. We see different innovators, commercial innovators specifically, they're gaining more clarity on operational needs and then the regulatory pathways. If they're not having those involved in every ongoing conversation throughout the year, this is the perfect opportunity to come and dig in and ask those questions. And then international, I think that it's important for us to understand what's working globally, and it's enabling shared learning and interoperability across borders, which is something that is incredibly important within our space, especially around the idea of transportation. So it's essential not just for advancing uncrewed systems, but really about building the type of trusted and secure frameworks that we need for public safety and infrastructure and transportation.
Yeah, and a big part of that is having both those hands-on experiences at the show, like demos and the test ranges, and then also those like more technical policy type of content. What do you do to balance both of the hands-on experiences and the breadth of content that you have?
Yeah, I think I'll tell you now, this is also a tip for those listening. It's about managing your schedule. So we will equip you with all of these different opportunities, the show floor, as well as in demo areas. We have schedules and things like that so that you understand what's happening at all times. The program runs, we have keynotes in the morning, which will provide more of a visionary and space to celebrate and think about like what's coming. to build momentum for the coming year. But then the breakout sessions are really, I would say, are like the meat and potatoes of the conference. So that's where you're going to get that face-to-face time and the opportunity to ask those questions of the regulatory leaders, of the technologists and researchers that are in the day-to-day grind, as well as like understanding the overall application of the technologies. So there's no better place to come if you really want to understand, hey, how are these utility providers or oil and gas stakeholders, how are they making decisions about how these technologies are implemented, or how could their feedback potentially inform future iterations of my technology? Like, this is the space to come and build a schedule and decide, like, this is my goal, this is what I want to get out of it, and then adjust accordingly.
Yes. Okay. Well, it really sounds like it's more than just an event. You have a bit of a community that you've built, and you mentioned carrying that momentum over to the next year. How do you foster that momentum year round?
Yeah, that's something that we're really intentional about. And honestly, is probably one of the things that the team is most proud of. Exponential has really become the big moment where everyone comes together for the year, but the community doesn't stop when the show floor closes. What we've really built at AUVSI is an ecosystem, and it's constantly evolving. And our job is to really keep that momentum going all year round, especially with the kind of dynamic and nascent nature of a lot of the industries that we're supporting. We do a lot of that through all the different channels that we have, through member programs, standards, certifications, advocacy, even regional events. And then obviously the team here has worked very hard to develop Exponential Europe. So we're expanding that community even further, creating more of a space for deeper global collaboration, transatlantic partnerships. So it's just a natural extension of the work we've been doing. And I think we do that with the intentional nature of making it a point to highlight industry successes, surface their challenges. Our CEO is always saying that we move to points of friction for the industry and help elevate those and help solve those for the industry, whether that's from research and development all the way kind of through deployment. So I think in general, it's knowing that Exponential is that hub, that kind of annual reunion, and using that to really catapult the community, and the community is what gives it the power. So it's something that we're always working on cultivating. But again, the way that people will come up to me at Exponential and say, you know, this is my 10th Exponential, this is how many years I've been going, and they kind of have their traditions and routines within it. I think it's something that brings people a lot of joy in the way that only something that brings all of these different people together can.
That's really great. Thank you for that. Again, we are talking to Keely Griffith, Vice President of Strategic Programs, and Casie Ocana, Vice President of Public Affairs at AUVSI. Thanks again to both of you for joining us on the podcast today. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we close it out?
I would just say that if you haven't looked yet, check out the keynote page specifically on the website, exponential.org/keynotes, because I think understanding the coverage from not only heavy and media hitters like Axios, but also the insights that will be gained from VCs like DCVC and One Defense, as well as our defense stakeholders from SOCOM, like, you're not going to want to miss it.
All right. Well, thank you again. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to UAS Magazine for more podcasts like this and to stay up to date on the latest industry news. We hope that you enjoyed this podcast, and we look forward to next time. Until then.